I couldn't hear.
Got it.
Many said that he had music on, but I couldn't hear it. So, but I do like to start my mornings to wake myself up and move around and just play whatever gets you going. But I played T Swift, Shake It Off.
Yeah. Well, we had whoever joined us at the last 30 seconds. You missed the party. There was a whole party over here. It's incredible. So hey, can we people that jump in on the call? Thank you so much because we are recording. So morning everybody. Barbara McNeill.
Hi.
Barbara McNeill. So I put a post this morning, right? And this is literally like if there's the perfect way to describe you and your style of business is like driving a Tesla, like from 0 to 100 in like 3-point-something seconds, right? If you know Barbara that well. And I play with the wording in a sense of like how you go from 0 to $100,000 in commission in 3, not seconds, but 3 months or 90 days. So I really just want to jump right into it because everybody know who you are. If you don't know who Barbara is, definitely go to our past recordings and Google search her and reach out to her regardless. But talk to us, Barbara.
Okay, well, so those of you who know me know that like I am somebody who kind of has I do things my own way, right? And I think that all of you guys have to do things the way that you're most comfortable because that's how you're going to be most successful. So I kind of started to really hack my own business, hack my own personality, and do what works for me. And what works for me is sometimes I just need a break, right? My business was always like this, right? And I used to think that that was a bad thing because they always say you want it to be like, steady, right? And sometimes that's the way it has to be for some people. But for me, I found that I was more productive when I went all in, right? And just push myself. And then I just took a break. Gary Keller will often say to you, hey, there's no such thing as balance. You're all in at home when you're all in at home. You're all in at work when you're all in at work. When you're on vacation, be all in on vacation. So I took that to heart and I just said, okay, how can I live my life that way? And so I just kind of say, okay, I'm going to start on this day. And this is the day that I'm going to start generating business. Right. And then I open up that tap and people say, well, how do you do that? And I'm having the conversations all the time with my clients and with people that are in my life, but I'm letting them know like, hey, when it comes at this time, we're going to start really moving. We're going to start looking for inventory. We're going to start whatever. And I just start talking more, picking up the phone as I get closer to that time frame where I want to start generating business, right? There's not magic to it, but what happens is you start to talk to people and then you start posting more, you start putting stuff out and then people start reaching out to you. At least that's how it works for me. So I put the intention out there. I put my whole motivation, my focus on it. There's a saying, what you focus on expands. So that's what I do. And then I start to like, start talking to people that are looking for something and it's going to be buyers and it's going to be sellers. Right. And then I try to like match make them together. And then if I can't, then I try to find other people that I can put together with that. So like if people on my team will tell you, I'm always paying attention to like what inventory is hitting the market, what other people are posting. So if you guys are posting stuff, I'm going to see it. And then I'm going to be like, hey, this is really good. And I'll throw it out to somebody else and I'll throw it to somebody on my team. And I'll be like, hey, this is a really good opportunity on this property that's coming up. Hey, this is this. And I start to just send it out to people in my sphere, start sending out to people on my team. If I talk to another agent in the office or another office who's telling me that they're looking for something, because that's what I'm also doing too, as I'm picking up the phone and calling other agents and saying, hey, do you have any inventory coming? Do you have anything going? And then I always try to tell them like, I have some stuff happening too. I'll call you when my stuff comes in, if you call me. So I'm always like putting those nuggets out into other people's brains. Like I'm looking for inventory, I will have inventory. And so then I just start making these connections with people. And the more you start putting that stuff out there, the more you're drawing people to you, right? Because they're going to ask questions. And I don't necessarily put out like the address, I do to my team, but to like, my sphere, I'll say, hey, there's this property and I'll send them pictures and I say, give me a call if it's something you think you'd be interested in, right? The other thing that I do, and I can let Meny talk if he wants to, but the other thing that I do is, like right now I have a lot of buyers reaching out to me, right? And I'm sure you guys are going through that too, because there's not very much inventory. So it's like, okay, how do I find inventory? So it's really great when I have buyers that are actually looking for something in particular, because then what I do is I get in touch with my title reps. For me, it's Ben Sue over at First American in Grant Alley. For you, it might be Fidelity, whoever it is, that's your person of choice. But what I do is I give them a call and say, hey, I'm looking for a 5-bedroom, 4-bath house in this neighborhood, this square footage. Can you give me the list of the most likely people to sell? Because they can do that. And you guys can do that yourself too. You can go into RealTax and then you can see like there's a score and it says people that are most likely to sell. And it's hilarious because I check my own people that end up listing with me and I go and check their score and I'm like, wow, yep, their score says that they're very likely to sell. Even like I have a listing right now that was only 2 years they lived there. So you'd think, oh, they're not going to be selling. Yeah, they are. and their probability of sales score was like in the 900. So I was like, wow, this is pretty accurate, right? That's the other thing too. I don't want you guys, like what a lot of people do is they forget to stay in touch with their sphere and the people that they've sold in real estate to, especially in the last 2 years, because a lot of people that bought quickly. They bought without really thinking and or in a hurry or in a panic. And it's hard for them to think about leaving because they got a great interest rate or whatever. But a lot of people don't realize that how bad inventory is and how strong the market is. So call those people, check in with them and say, hey, how's it going? Is that house working out for you? There's a lot of people out here looking to buy. So if you are in that situation where you're not super happy with where you're at, let's have a conversation about how we can fix that, right? So, so you have to have those conversations. I know I'm jumping all over the place. I was saying to Meny earlier that my ADHD people will be totally on board with this because we're really good at hyper focusing. And we can jump all over the place and we can go over here, go over here, go over here, go over here. For the other people, this works for you too, but it might be something that's a system that you put in place all the time, right? That you just say, hey, on Tuesdays, I call 15 people. On Wednesdays, I send out mailers. On Thursdays, I do this. So you can set up a system to do this. Mine is more, I do have my things I do every morning, like looking at inventory. I see what's come on the market. I look at what's withdrawn, what's held. Another place to look for listings, you guys, go in and see, like pull up a neighborhood and see what didn't sell, right? Like people went on the market and there was a period of time where it kind of slowed down. And so they went on the market and they haven't come back on yet. A lot of times they might still be looking at talking to their agent, but they might be blaming their agent, right? So I go in and I look at those withdrawals, anything that's like in the last, year, and I go and look and see if they've gone back on the market. I look at the history, the listing history. And then if they haven't and their property matches what I'm looking for, or even if it doesn't, I give them a call and just say, hey, I have a client who's looking, are you still thinking about selling? And then they might give me their agent's name. That's fine. I'll call their agent. But if they don't, then I also say, hey, maybe I can put something together that'll make it work this time. So that's another thing you can do. And I know it's kind of like chasing expireds, but it's different because you're doing it more with a purpose. But a lot of people are not doing that. And so those are things that I would do.
So first of all, that's how I promoted this session, from 0 to 100. Okay, so you can see she is a 0 to 100 girl in 3 seconds. Okay, so I told you, take it easy, have your coffee. Barbara, a couple of questions for you. Number one is, do you recall, is there a website for the score check? Sorry, the sales score, or just that?
Yeah, so there's if you go onto RealTax, you can find it there. So if you go into your MLS and then you go into, like, let's say you go look for a property, that's how you can do it. But the way that I do it, because I don't have that, like, I don't always have that kind of time. A lot of times I'll go and look at specific properties in certain neighborhoods, right? So I'll go in, but what I do is I call my title rep and I say, hey, Ben, can you get me a list of all the properties in this neighborhood? And I give him the parameters and I say that are most likely to sell, right? And he will send me a list. And then if he's got the phone numbers, if he's got the addresses, he'll send that over too. So then I can just make those calls easily. I also have, like, you can have like Spokio. There's like a whole bunch of other different kind of websites where you can go and find phone numbers and information that way so that you can call people up. I invest in Truth Finder because that helps me to find, like, phone numbers, email addresses, all that other stuff that sometimes doesn't show up on that, on the more general things. So I go and I just try and find their phone numbers and I call them. And amazingly, people are pretty friendly. Like when you call and you say, hey, look, I have a client who's looking for a property in your neighborhood. And I'm sure you get a ton of these phone calls, but I'm seriously actively looking. Have you thought about selling? And so anyway, that's what I do to save myself time. So get in relationship with your title reps, you guys. They have so many things that they can do for you and save you time. And so that's what you kind of want to do. You want to get those lists. You want to get that information. You want to get in a relationship with them. And, when they do stuff for you, you want to send them business because that's, makes them even more motivated to get you stuff faster.
Yeah, and Pamela, what you texted while you were texting, she was repeating herself the second time. So yes, she did mention, and if anybody missed anything, right, so you can watch the recordings later on. Another, just to put that out there as a disclaimer, is when you call those numbers, remember that sometimes some of those numbers might be on the do not call list. And if you did call a number and the person said like, hey, how did you get this number? My number is on the do not call list. The first thing you want to do is apologize first, okay? Because it's becoming a very ugly thing overall, and you don't want to be that agent, so apologize. Barbara, so the second thing I want to ask you is, you mentioned, and you keep repeating yourself over and over and over again, because it's one of your habits which that's the path to success. You said, throughout the years, the first thing you do in the morning is check inventory, right? So it's like an elite athlete. Like, the first thing that they do is I exercise, I stretch or whatever. So this is, just to mention.
Look, you guys, one of the things that I do every day is I wake up. Well, first thing, if I'm really serious, when I get into this zone of when I'm like, okay, I'm focused, right? I'm ready to go look for inventory. I need to know everything that's happening in the market. I need to know everything. And I will hyper focus on it, right? I set up because there's so little inventory right now too. So it's really easy to do this, but I'll put into the MLS and I'll create my own, searches, right? And I'll do every neighborhood, and I'll zero in. And then in the morning I get right? And then I just open it up and I'm like, what happened? What happened? What happened? And I want to see what's going on hold. I want to see what's wrong. I want to see all of it, right? And there's so little inventory that it's really easy, but then you get really familiar with the market. You start going, oh, this one went in, this one went out. This is what's going on here, what happened here. And you really start to understand every little neighborhood. Like, I moved down to Orange County 3 years ago. And I would say 50% of my business now is down here. Why? Because what I focus on expands. So I had to learn all of these neighborhoods. As I drive through Orange County, I'm like, I grew up down here, but there's so much building that happens, right? So I'm like, wow, this is like, there's so many houses here and there's so little inventory. This is insane, right? Some of these people have to be looking to move. Right now, I'm actually going through and looking at short-term rentals, right? Because a lot of those people aren't getting the same type of traffic they were getting before. So I'm calling those people and saying, hey, pandemic's over. You guys thinking about selling that place now? Because I got a buyer, right? So that's just a lot of different things that you guys can do. But looking at that inventory, I look at the rentals, I look at the short-term rentals, I look at everything, because if they're sitting on a rental for a while, they might want to sell that baby, right? So I just hyper focus.
Yeah, and just another point to make, right? Just to put you guys in the right perspective, Barbara, you are primarily a listing agent. However, correct. However, you definitely utilizing, right, the buyer, book of business, if you may, as a leverage against how to get listing as well.
Yeah, because buyers become sellers, right? Like, that's the whole thing. Renters become buyers, and then buyers become sellers, and then sellers become buyers. So, there was a period of time where people would always just go, I'm just a listing agent, and they wouldn't take on any buyers at all. And I think that's a big mistake, because the market we just came out of will tell you that, you have to be working with both, and to understand when the market's going to shift. If you're not working with buyers, you don't know what their mindset is. So then when you get a listing, you don't know like how long it's going to take. Like, I'll tell people like, hey, look, if you want your house to sell fast, we got to price it right. We've got to make sure we do all the little things, because people will hesitate if they think that there's something better that will come on the market. But if yours looks like the best thing, they're going to move quicker. But I understand that, because I'm out there showing property every day, and I know what my competition looks like too. So it's really important to work with buyers, even if you're a listing agent, and if you have a team, to talk to your team about what their mindset is and what their thought process is and what their concerns are, so that you can address all those things on the listing side, right? Or when you're calling somebody and trying to get a listing appointment, just say, look, we work with buyers too, and this is what they're telling us. So we're going to give you that insight, and we're going to be able to shift a lot faster than other people are, because we understand what the market's doing, right? And that's the thing, is when you're selling yourself to somebody, it's really important that you're the expert, because if you're watching the mainstream news, like, they'll talk doom and gloom about the real estate market. And in some places it is like that, right? Like, a lot of people, moved to the Midwest and now they're moving back. But in LA, Orange County, like, there's no inventory. And if you have a good property, you're still going into multiples. Now, if you're overpriced, if you didn't do the work because we came out of a market where you didn't have to do any of that and it would sell anyway, we're not in that market, but we're still in a seller's market.
Right.
And so, but it's your job to like make sure that they understand like what it's going to take to get the best buyer, to get it through escrow, and to prepare themselves for the next steps.
Yeah, otherwise you disconnect, you know, there's too much of a gap of you really understanding what's happening today, not yesterday and maybe tomorrow, right?
Yeah. And if you guys aren't like paying attention to what's going on the loan side, like really become like, it's not your job to like be their financial advisor per se, but it is your job to understand what's happening in the economic market. And a lot of people are worried, but one of the things that I see with you know, the banks and all that kind of stuff is, okay, well, look, if I'm worried about my cash collapsing, if I'm worried about the stock market going up and down, if I'm worrying about all these other things, where am I going to put my money? Well, a lot of people that have money are putting it in real estate. So you want to be looking at that and saying, okay, who are my buyers? Who are my sellers right now? Who are the people that are going to be worried? Who has cash to put in someplace, right? I mean, I just put a $5.6 million property on the market. It's a very unique property. And there was a lot of, you know, in that area, I was noticing that most things were taking 100 days to sell for this high-end listings. I sold it in 13 days. But I didn't just look for like, wait for somebody to come. I started reverse prospecting up to like Napa Valley and places like that. Because I'm like, okay, a lot of those people who might have had startups or whatever, they're like, okay, I don't need to be up here anymore. My business is changing. And, you know, they have the money. They're selling a Napa $20 million property. And my 5.6, you know, is very much like a Napa neighborhood in San Juan. That's who my buyer was. Like, that's how they came to me, right? They came through that reverse prospecting, but I didn't just do it in my area. I was like, let me go into every area where this buyer might exist, right?
Yeah, and again, just to put that emphasis on how you do your business, which is you're not just sitting there waiting for something to happen. You're very, very proactive, but you've been proactive like 24/7. Like, you're not waiting for something specific. It's a consistent production.
Yeah. And one of the things I would say, it's like, I kind of do this thing where I say, I turn on the spigot. So everyone's like, wow, Barbara went from 0 to 100. One of the things I will say though, is that I'm always having conversations with people about real estate, always, all the time. Now, am I driving it? No, like I can tell, like, have you guys ever been in an open house where, you know, you're in the zone and you're like, I am getting clients. I am selling this house. I am this, right? I feel it. I know exactly when I'm like, yeah, this is going to happen today. Right? I'm picking up every single person that walks in that door. I'm going to wow them. And I'm going to make them wish that they were with me if they're not, right? I kind of do that when I, you know, like, I don't know, I just do that, right? And so I'll go into that zone, but then there's this other like kind of underlying zone that I'm in all the time, which is just like, hey, I'm here I don't even think of myself as a real estate agent. I consider myself as a real estate coach. And I'm always coaching people on the best thing that they can do, whether there's anything in it for me or not, right? I'm constantly coaching them on what they can do to put themselves in a better position financially. I'm often talking about real estate, but I'm also talking about other stuff, right? Like, you know, when there was the I-Series bond where it was getting, you know, 9% interest rate, I told everybody that I knew, I'm like, hey, you guys got to get on this. If you got $10,000 and your kids have $10,000, put this in there, because you're not going to make it's a safe bet, and you're not going to make this kind of interest on anything. Right. When you start talking to them about some of this other stuff that you're doing, then they kind of go, wow, she's looking out for me, right? She cares about me. There's not even anything in it for her on that, right? And that's just like something I'm doing all the time, so that when it comes time for them to like sell real estate, they raise their hand and they call me.
Yeah, right? You're very resourceful, you know, and I think that every agent should be resourceful in that sense. And there's one thing I also want to go back for a second and point out, because it's very, very important for the I would call it like the health score, the health balance of the business, right? So Barbara, you are a driver, right? In our you know, DISC language, you are a high D, DI, but primarily D. So
well, I'm 99D and 99I.
There we go. So how did I guess? So having said that, a driver, right, is someone who just want to go, make things happen like right away. If you are not that kind of type of a person, which is totally okay, maybe you need to find a Barbara to put that spice in your business. Now, if you're a new agent, you know, your mentor, you know, see if it's the right match. If you're in the business for quite some time and your production is suffering the last whatever time frame. Find someone who will help you to balance that drive. Otherwise, what happens, Barbara, and you can take it from here, is like you just dive too deep into the fine print.
Yeah, what I find a lot of times is that when I'm talking to someone who's an SC, like you guys need to have all your ducks in a row, right? You're like, well, this is going to happen, then this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And you can get really stuck in that cycle, right? You can get paralyzed by it. When you're around a high D or you're around like a certain type of personality, like we're very big picture. Like, okay, whenever I make a decision about anything, I say, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the best thing that can happen? And then I say, can I handle the worst thing that could happen? Then I'm like, if the answer is yes, then I'm like, let's go, right? I make a really quick decision. And I also ask myself a question of like, what's the worst thing that could happen if I do this, right? And I'm like, yeah, I can live with that. Let's go, right? So a lot of times you can be like, oh, I don't know all this and I'm gonna embarrass myself and whatever. Nobody expects you to know everything. You just say, and I don't know the answer to that, or that's a great question. I want to be accurate and I want to give you the best answer. So let me do a little bit of thinking on it and then I'll get back to you, right? And then call somebody that might know the answer and say, hey, how would you handle this? Or they asked me this question and I didn't know how to respond to it. What do you think I should do? Like I try to like brainstorm because I want to teach people on my team how to think and how to think through those problems so that you can solve it yourself later. So I might say, well, what do you think you should do? And you might have the answer, but you just don't trust yourself. So you need someone that says to you like, look, you're smart, you're creative, you're innovative. Like, the answer, let's bounce this around and then come up with some ideas. And then you will then be able to do this on your own when the time comes, right? But if there's no Barbara in your life or there's nobody like that, do it to yourself. Like just say, okay, what are the things that I can do? And you write down a list of like, okay, I know the answer to this question. What are 5 things that I could do to like solve this problem? Boom, 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 boom. And then pick one. And if that one doesn't work, well, guess what? You've got 4 more options to go back to, right? So
Yeah.
that's just what I do. And you need somebody in your life that can do that for you.
Yeah, yeah. Just overall, just to be better at asking questions, like start with yourself.
Dude, the questions, like that's the biggest thing that a lot of people don't do is they don't ask questions. And when you're newer, or even if you've been in the business for a while, but you're finding yourself like in a funk, I think just starting to ask people questions like, well, why, you've lived in that place for a long time. Like, what do you love about it, right? Anything that you learn from somebody else is going to be something that helps you to talk to the next person, right? So when I talk to somebody and they'll go, well, yeah, it seems like we really love it, but what we don't like about this place, boom, 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 right? I put that in my file in my head, like I have a movie reel in my head all the time. And then I go talk to somebody else and they're like, yeah, we've got this house but it's becoming too much and too much land, too much whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, pattern recognition, right? And then I say, I was talking to somebody else that was basically saying that they needed more space. Would you guys ever think about selling if I brought you the buyer? Right? And it's just like that. Like my brain just makes those connections, right? So the more you talk to people, the more questions you ask, the more you file the information away in your head. And if you're not good at filing that, write it down and review it every night before you go to bed. Review it when you wake up in the morning. Who do I know that's looking for something, right? And then it becomes something that you do start to remember. But then you start connecting people. And it's just, that's the way that you build the business, right? It's relationships. It's one conversation at a time.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Connecting the dots, right? If it's business to business, if it's a person into a house, a buyer to a seller. We almost at the end of the first quarter, right? First 3 months of the year. How was your 2023? How is it going so far, and what's happening in the next 90 days in Barbara's world?
Yeah, so for me, my goal, guys, to be fully transparent, is to work my ass off for about 4 months, and then take time for myself, right? To take care of my health, to take care of my family, to do all these other things, and then to hand the rest of the stuff off to my team, right? And help them grow and build their businesses, right? They can't wait for that to happen. But when I go into lead generation mode, or when I go into generating mode, then that's what ends up happening. It's a snowball effect. So for me, I kind of was like, hey, I'm taking time off in the beginning of the year, but come March, I'm going to start putting my foot on the gas, right? So I basically started calling people, started lining things up. And for me, again, I just had a $5.6 million listing I put into escrow. I'm keeping those people out looking for a property. I started getting, people that I started calling that were friends or past clients that are sending me leads. Those people are buyers, so I'm going out looking for their listings, and then calling people that I know that might sell, and that's turned into 3 or 4 people that are going to be listing in the next month. So we're getting their properties prepped, ready to go. And so that's it. So by the end of April, I will have put $11-12 million into escrow. And I started in March.
That's yeah, that's very purposeful, very determined, right? To generate that. Now, do you have the same pattern happening every year? Is that like your kind of style of business?
I used to do it like more like this and this, and then I would feel guilty in that downtime, so I couldn't enjoy it. Now I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm turning off, right? Like I'll pick up the phone and I'll coach my team and I'll send leads to them when the time comes. But before I used to be like this, and I'd be like, woo, yeah. And then I don't know how a lot of you guys feel, but then I'm in here and I'm in like not my strength, which is, you know, the paperwork and the dealing with emotions and all that other kind of stuff. And then I find myself going, God, I'm exhausted. I need a break, right? But then I feel guilty during this time, and my business would be like, then there wouldn't be anything generating. But I started to accept that about myself and say, okay, look, this is just how your pattern is. This is what you do. So you need to go, woo, get all your stuff done. And then maybe I'm still generating, but I'm like done. I can't, I need to unplug. I need to recharge. Well, that's why now I have my team. So I can say, okay, I'm done. I'm recharging. I can coach you guys because we have a system, but I'm going to hand these leads off to them now. Right. And then just try to help them through that process of getting, you know, switching people over or whatever. And then once I'm ready again, and I'm like, okay, Barbara's recharged. She's got her energy back. Then it's like, woo, let's go again. Right. And then I do try to tell my people, hey, go take a vacation. Right. Go rest, go unplug, go recharge your batteries. Right.
But you're always keeping the threshold at a certain point.
What was what?
You're always keeping that level of business at some point, the threshold.
Yeah. So ideally what happens then is, and again, you guys, like, there's going to be things you can't control about the market. Like I can't tell you how many times I tried to be that person that's like, okay, I'm going to set it up so I have people coming. Invariably what happens is that they're like, okay, I've got it all lined up. Everybody's ready to go. And then something happens in their life or something happens here. And then they're like, yeah, we're going to push it off. And then suddenly I get 10 all at once. Right. That's going to happen. Right. Like you cannot time this market. You cannot time when people are going to sell. You can try, but the best thing you can do is create systems, support other people that can help you when you need a break. And then this way you can just keep generating. So my team will continue to generate. Income will continue to come in when I'm taking a break, and simultaneously when they're taking a break, like they have people that can help them. And you know, it doesn't have to be a team. You don't have to create that kind of system. You can have a buddy system. That's what I did when I first started in the business. And a lot of those agents that I became buddies with, you know, when they got out of the business, who do you think they called to like hand their business to? Me, right? So you know, there's just, I don't know if that answered your question. I have a tendency to go on tangents, you guys. Sorry.
Oh, hey, it's
who I am.
And that's why it works really well. Yeah. By the way, any questions for Barbara? Any? I saw some comments in the chat, but nothing specific. Just type in the chat if you have any specific questions. While we have.
And one thing I'll say to you guys is like, on that note, be who you are. Your vibe will attract your tribe. Okay. Yeah. I fully believe that. Like if you're trying to be something you're not, it's going to come off as inauthentic. It's not going to smell right. And those people aren't going to connect with you. Right. So be yourself, be genuine. Like some people might be like, who would work with Barbara? She's all over the place. Da, 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 da. But I can really zero in and focus when I'm talking to somebody about one thing. Right. But I can go all over the place too. But those are my people. I'm okay with that. All right. You need to be okay and know who you are and embrace that 100%. Because there's people out there for you.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, I mean, you know, talking about success in business, right? You have to be diversified as well, or in a sense of like diversity, like people that you know, different styles, etc. So, you know, it's good to know others. Like if someone like say like, oh, I'm like Barbara, so that's thumbs up. And if like I'm not like Barbara, well, maybe you need to know people in that capacity, regardless that not just in this industry, but also in the sense of you know, clientele, right?
Yeah. So I see a question here. It says, when you get those addresses from the title company of people likely to sell, what's the next step? Do you call them, send letters, door knock? I think you may have just answered while I was typing. So I don't know if that did get answered, but my next step is I'll take that stuff. And especially if I'm looking for something in particular, one of the things that I do, you guys, is I dive deep into that person's property and I'll pull their stuff up and I'll be like, okay, when did they buy? What did they buy for? If they just bought last year, and they're, you know, the market hasn't appreciated enough, or my client's not in that price point, if I'm looking for a specific property for a specific client, I don't call them right away. I put them on my call later list if I'm looking for inventory for a particular client at a particular price point. And if I know it's not a match, like it doesn't have a view, it doesn't have the pool, it doesn't have whatever, I literally pull it up on Google Maps. I'm looking at it from above. I'm looking at everything I can find out about that property, so that when I call, I can be very specific with them. Or when I knock on their door, I can be like, look, I've got somebody doing this, right? I do this one thing too. Sometimes if I'm going to knock on a door, you guys, and some people don't like it, other people think it's hilarious. I've always had a good reaction to it, but I'll do a wanted poster with a picture of my family and say, this family is missing their house. Have you seen it? And and it says wanted at the top, or missing. And it, makes people look, right? And then I'll say, this family is, looking for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house and this price point, blah, 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 blah. Have you seen their house? Here's what they bring to the table, right? And that's like a kind of an icebreaker when you knock on a door and just say, well, hey, can I leave this with you? I've got permission from the family to have this picture and to have done this. So, so that's some of the stuff that you can do, right? You can knock on the door with a wanted poster or a missing poster. You can call them. You can send out, sometimes like one of the things you guys can do, and I think this is a little better if you can afford it, but you can just do a little postcard, right? And send it out to them. And if it's not a lot of inventory that you're looking at, like do a handwritten one and just send out a card and just say, hey, my client's looking for this, blah, 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 blah. And then when you go to knock on their door, you call them, you can say, hey, I sent out a mailer. I'm not sure if you got it, but my client's really, really looking for this. And I just want to make sure that you got it and that you saw that we're looking for this and it's legit, it's real, right? If you're not working with an agent, I can represent both sides and maybe we can make that work better for you. But if you're more comfortable working with somebody else, please let me know what their name is and I'll give them a call. I'm not trying to harass you, just, working hard for my client, right? And when they see you doing that, they're like, man, I hope I have an agent that works this hard for me, right? And if somebody gives you a hard time, then you just say like, hey, I know that this might seem intrusive, but man, when you're looking for a property, you're going to want somebody to do this for you.
Yeah, you're planting the seed for later on. It's very smart. Amazing nuggets for sure. Your team is based out of the KW South Bay. Yes. I mean, of course, you're servicing Southern California or California in general. Are you looking to expand this year? If so, like how does it work in sense of like what's the right match for Barbara's team?
It's funny because I say all the time that I'm not looking to expand. I'm not looking to grow. But I just added another agent to my team, and was a friend of mine who's in real estate called me and said, hey, this person's kind of, struggling a little bit. They haven't found the right match, the right brokerage. And I said, look, I'm not looking to grow my team, but I'm happy to have a phone call with her. So then I ended up talking to her, and her energy was our energy. She was our people, right? Like I said, your vibe attracts your tribe. I'm very, very careful about who joins my team. And that's not because there's not amazing people out there, right? But I know that I'm not for everybody. And I'm very careful about my energy. And if you need more than I can give you, if you need something that I don't do, I'm going to identify that and recognize it. And it's not because I don't think you're amazing and great and awesome. It's just that I know that I can't give you what you need, and that's going to drain me. And so, so for me, it's just like, sometimes I just meet somebody that it's a match. And I wasn't planning on adding Rochelle Hollins to our team, but she just was a match. And I had everybody in the team talk to her, and they're like, yeah, she's great.
That's awesome.
So it just worked out, right? And we just invited her to join us. But that's not going to be for everybody. But I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how it works for me. It's a feel, it's a intuition, it's an ADHD thing. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, it's also because you're pouring so much into them, and I think that it's got a vibe the same, so
yeah. If you need to learn, if you need spreadsheets, if you need like all this stuff to be like we're not a good match. But if you learn by doing and hearing and repetitive hearing me tell you the same things over and over and over again, because that's what I do, then it's a good match. But if you're somebody that's like, hey, I need to have like this full-on daily task thing and you need me to write it down, we're not going to be a good match. Like I expect you to listen to what I say and then go do it.
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, taking action is what really, gets the results, right? I mean, planning is very important, but taking action is what will get you the results at the end of the day.
And the other thing too, guys, is that action begets more action, right? Like, so if you're in a funk and you're not doing stuff, you need to look at your day and say, what am I doing with my day? Am I going out and looking at property? Am I getting on my computer? Am I going on Canva and creating, reels or doing anything that's going to generate anything? Am I doing the activity that's going to lead to the activity that I want? It's, a lot of people go, oh, I started doing this and I was just doing leases, whatever, and it's just snowballed and I'm so busy. Well, that's not by accident. Like, that's because you started doing the activity. Like, there's no secret to me being able to turn on my faucet. I just turn on the faucet, right? I start doing the activity to start, getting the business. And when I turn it off, it's amazing. My phone will be ringing, ringing, ringing. And then I go, I got to turn this off. I got to dial down. I need a break, right? I can't give the same energy that I was giving before. So I turn it off, and guess what? The phone stops ringing. It's amazing. But then as soon as I'm ready, guess what? The phone starts ringing again. Why? Because I started putting myself out there and I became available. So if you're not out there, if you're not going to talk to people, if you're not talking to your friends, your family, whoever, if you're a secret agent,
Exactly.
Nobody knows that you're out selling real estate, and you're not going to get any business. Go be active.
Right. Barbara McNeill, from 0 to 100 on a daily basis, pretty much. Love you. Thank you for sharing those amazing nuggets for the day and inspiring us, and enjoy the rest of your morning coffee.
And I love that Kim put in my information. If you guys get in touch with me on Instagram, I'll get back to you. And if you don't hear from me, just keep bugging me. I'll get back to you eventually.
All right, Barbara, thank you so much. That was
all right. Thanks, you guys. Good luck. Get out there and go sell houses.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here.